listen to me. Listen to me. Sit down. We're taking pictures from my parents. Do you understand that? Mm-hmm. We're taking pictures like we're a couple, like we like each other, like we're husband and wife, and we span time together. We span time together as a couple, because we're a loving couple, spanning time. These photos are us in love, spanning time. No bullshit faces, no funny faces. Just look like you like me. That's all I want. Just look like you like me. That's it. Can you do that?
You're so weird. Fine. All right, let's go.
Yeah. Are you going to do it or you're not going to do it?
I'll do my best.
I don't want to waste more money. Just do it right, all right? We're in love. We're spanning time. Look like you like me. Look like we're husband and wife, okay?
I do like you, Billy.
Okay, you know what I mean. I mean like you like me like you're my wife, like you're in love, that kind of like. Like we're in love, spanning time, okay? And just do it right, all right?
All right, I'll do my best.
Don't do your best. Do it right, okay? And don't get smart. I don't want to waste $2. Just do it right.
All right.
All right. Look like you love me. Let's span time, okay? Let's span time together.
There's a man who you see, and he looks just like you and me. Didn't you know? Everything that don't show. There's a car who you see, and it looks like every car on the street. You will discover. Can't you just stop by and discover?
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Stuff We've Seen. This is Jim, and now here he is, recently released from the detention center in Homestead, Florida. Chuck Todd's personal hairstylist, Teal.
Let me tell you, I've been doing Chuck's hair for a while now, and it really just requires a comb.
Yeah, you got a little, like, very interesting sort of racetrack pattern going there. Let's not spend too much of the program talking about Chuck Todd, but why wouldn't you just shave it down bald?
He's just got to just shave it down bald. Yeah.
It does not look attractive. This guy is actually on national television, and I guess we shouldn't hair shame, but he scares me, this guy. He really does. I mean, I look at him, and he frightens me, and every time I find out he's going to be doing something like this, I think maybe this is the time that he's going to, like, get rid of that.
No. As his personal stylist, I got to say, we really are loving this direction we've gone with his hair, and we think it's bringing in a lot of new people.
I think you need to stick to your podcasting job. This might be one too many for you.
I think it is, yes. I need to stop moonlighting as Chuck Todd's personal stylist, yeah.
But hey, gang, out there, I know you're like, we could listen to this all day, and we could too. But we're going to talk about films. And, one thing in this crazy age of the internet is the day of the film critic is kind of over. There are film critics, here and there, but a lot of them have, passed on, all the great ones. And those who, followed in their footsteps, they were all relegated to online blogs, and they've lost all their jobs that they used to have in these magazines that don't exist anymore. So in its place, in its wake, what we have is the online user critic.
Yes, the user critic.
They've replaced the critic. Now you can get like thousands of reviews from your everyday average citizen. Then,
except not on Netflix. Oh no, actually you can find the comments. They're buried kind of, but you can find them.
Are they?
Yes. Yeah.
But I myself am not a person who utilizes Rotten Tomatoes. I don't go to check things out there. I might see what the score is on Metacritic, and I'm an IMDB user, and I tend to see what the aggregate scores are of a movie.
Okay.
But but I was a person as a child. That was the first thing I wanted to do in the movie business. I wanted to be a film critic. Because of Siskel and Ebert, that was the job that I wanted. And I religiously read the reviews in my paper, the Boston Globe. So there was Jay Carr and this guy, Michael Blauen.
Yep.
Those were my two guys that I would read. And I wasn't so much interested in the plot points of a movie, but I just wanted to hear, was a film good or not good, but why? You know, from the critical point of view, why was this not good or good? And then I enjoyed, if I wanted to see the movie, regardless of what they said, did it measure up to my standards? But now that art form is largely lost in the sea of these reviews. And it's kind of it's a gripe, these reviews, which I just think are not really well written, but yet I'm fascinated because people are compelled. They're compelled to tell everybody on the planet what their, thoughts were.
Yes. The thing is about these online reviews is there's sort of different groupings. Like Amazon reviews are a very different type of review than the IMDB review. They have a whole different kind of personality.
Oh, I gotcha.
Right? There's a certain type of person that leaves reviews on IMDB and another type that leaves them on Amazon.
This is what I think is so funny. A lot of these people, especially when they don't like a review, they feel they are doing a public service.
Yes.
To let you know you've got to stay away, and yet it's their carefully written review is going to stop you from making the same mistake that they did.
And IMDb does have the carefully written, lengthy reviews, whereas like on Metacritic, it's just somebody saying, critics are stupid, man, this movie rocked.
Yes.
And that's the whole user review on Metacritic.
Or there's this debate of whether bots have left the review, and then there are people who can't understand all the one reviews, and they say, don't listen to the haters. Listen to me. So this reoccurring segment, this is the first segment of what's going to be many, I like to call, let's check in with our IMDb user critics. And, there's been a lot of discussion around the ending series Game of Thrones.
Yes.
And there's a lot of hate. So I didn't go scouring for possibly the greatest review, but this one caught my eye, and I thought that I would start by reading this one.
Okay.
And it is by the user type-A1fa, which I guess is sort of like an alpha type person. So I'm gathering that may be, a little bit about this person's personality. And here is the review. It starts off with the headline, Shame of Thrones.
Oh, yeah. Mm-hmm. Very clever.
Yes. Now here I go.
Okay.
The ending of this series is a disservice to the public. The first seasons are great, as they are based on the book's source material, and apparently the writers are good enough at adapting other people's ideas. After season 4, there's a decline, not so manifest at first, since the goodness of the source material still lingers around. It's more of a slow deterioration, a spiral into shallow writing that peaks in a last season to devoid of content and value, where at first grand-scale developments, societal issues, and world-spanning intrigues dominated the narration, with characters being the pawns of the true overarching story. Later in the seasons, characters and stereotypical interactions take the stage, and the interesting, long-developing issues that made the story captivating get resolved in the most unrewarding ways possible. It's incoherent, detached, uninspired writing. It's everything that is bad in mainstream media. All of this because the writers decided they had enough with the show and grew bored with it. So they wanted to wrap it up as soon as possible in order to go on and ruin the Star Wars franchise more
Wait,
than
Star
it
Wars?
already is. Thanks for your disservice. I'll get back to that in a second there, sir. I'll hold the Star Wars comment. It needs to be mentioned that the overall production, sound design, acting, cinematography, all of these are quite extraordinary and elevate the show quite a bit, even when the writing declines. The quality is amazing. It probably is still worth watching for its entertainment value. It just doesn't pay off. The ending season ruins quite literally everything. See, now if that's how you you take on these reviews in that kind of voice, which is in my head, they're quite amusing. But yes, I guess to answer your question, since you don't read up on these things, the creators of the show have been tapped to work on the next trilogy of Star Wars movies. They will be developing.
Oh,
yeah, so
I
now all
see.
the fanboys out there are in an outrage.
Okay, I see. Okay, because they didn't like the ending of Game of Thrones, and therefore Star Wars will be terrible. Okay, I get it. Yeah. Okay.
Yes.
So,
Yes.
we were talking about endings recently, and I ending of Game of Thrones, ending of the Avengers, and there was a movie I was thinking about that I really liked the ending of, and so I was looking on IMDb. It turns out that the ending is the studio ending.
Okay.
And the director didn't like the ending. I understand.
Oh, okay, that's interesting.
Yeah, I understood. So I sort of went into a can of worms, and so I was looking for reviews that addressed the ending, and so this one, I guess I should tell you the name of the movie, is Risky Business.
I do know that there is a different ending, and I've seen what exists of it, because it is one of my favorite movies from my childhood.
Me too, and it has a great ending, I think. Although I understand, so apparently the very last scene with them walking through the park was what the studio wanted and not what Paul Berkman wanted. I think that scene still works. I don't think it undermines what the movie's going for. But here's a review on IMDb called, it's 1 out of 10 stars.
Oh, yes, it's the classic.
It's the
IMDb 1 out of 10 stars.
You're-
Which, even things I hate, I don't give 1 star out of unless
1
it's
out
an
of 10
absolute
stars.
piece of garbage.
The title of the review is Better Ending. And this is by Jerson _1981.
Ah, good old Jerson _1981.
Now, I'm not sure what Jerson's going for here. I can't tell if Jerson doesn't speak English well or is making fun of people who don't speak English well.
Yeah, well, I want to just stop you for 1 second because this is something, and again, we aren't making, look, we're going to read these things as they are written, and it is hard to know. Some people are using translators,
Yes.
as another review if we get to it that I have, and I'm not sure where they come from, so it is hard to tell. But yet the important thing is they had a story to tell. They
Yes.
needed to tell
And they
in
need
the
to
English
express-
language.
Yes, they somehow needed to express themselves. And the thing about Risky Business is it's kind of the movie's a little tricky in that I think people who didn't see it initially, or it's easy to watch it and not understand that it's a satire.
Yeah, and also not having any context of what was happening in America in
Exactly.
the early 80s.
Yes.
And even myself, I think this is why that movie is so great even years later, is there are layers that I was not able to unpeel as a 13-year-old when I first
Exactly.
saw it.
Yeah.
At the drive-ins, by the way.
I didn't see it. I saw it in the theater initially, but it's a satire about 80s greed and business and capitalism and the Reagan era go-go culture. And okay, so here's the review by Jerson _1981.
Good old Jerson _1981. Get to know it.
Warning, spoilers.
Oh, okay, thank you.
This movie explained to me why American culture considered to be like rock eroding from Chinese water torture. Stupid American kid fool around with hooker. He get what he deserve. He lucky he only get house ripped off. He still have his privates. Midget actor Tom Cruise make lousy stripper. I laugh at his tighty whities. Girl who play hooker look too young to be crack user. Hookers not look like that. Not one's teenage boy can afford. Pimp chase him, threaten him. It serve him right. He an idiot. Why I supposed to care if parents found out? Then they can cane him hard with stick. Teach brat a lesson. Good American solution to problem. He throw orgy, charge money. More hooker girls too pretty to make sex with pimply high school boys. Better ending is he get caught. See how long smirk lasts in prison bathroom. So yes, I guess maybe that would be a different ending.
That is I mean, I don't know what to make of that. You're right. I don't know whether someone's joking. Are they from another country?
It's very hard to tell, but whatever it is, they somehow felt this was the way to express the fact that they didn't like this movie. And and they didn't like the ending, and there's a lot of reviews on IMDb about this ending and about how people didn't like it because there's no consequence and it gets away scot-free. And that's the whole point of the movie.
Wow. I mean, maybe that is something that later, generations have sort of developed.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a learning. I mean, the idea it's not an accident. His name is Joel Goodson.
Yes.
He's the good son, and he has been sheltered, and he's been brought up to have a specific life and a plan. And, his adolescence, he is trying to fight against what his parents' plan for him is, and he's also worried about his future. And then it goes into, I mean, it's like a fantasy. It is the white boy fantasy.
Yes.
And the movie makes it a point that this fantasy, right, that he has is going to be a nightmare. And he's also experiencing weird sexual nightmares throughout the movie. I mean, again, I didn't think we were going to talk about Risky Business, and we should at another time because
we should at another time, but yeah, and it's just for me, it's a great ending. Sometimes you got to say, "What the heck." The fact that their relationship remains, his relationship with her remains totally transactional. And that's, everyone else is saying what the F throughout the movie. But when the father says that to me is the real ending, is the father saying that, is that like, not only are you going to get away with it, you're going to be celebrated for it by this sort of rich white culture.
Yes, the idea that you can basically turn your parents' house into a brothel for a night.
Yes.
And it essentially makes his future because his grades really weren't
good. But he gets accepted.
Ivy League. They weren't Ivy League material.
Yes, and he gets accepted to Princeton because he's turned his house into a brothel.
Yeah, but isn't it the original ending? Their conversation is different because it's a little bit more pessimistic because he doesn't get into Princeton.
Yes.
So it basically at the end is sort of the, I guess, I think the studio version was the right version.
I do too. Well, and I really like him getting away scot-free. It reminds me of another ending, is Lord of War. Have you seen that?
I have.
With Nick Cage.
Yeah, I've seen it.
But just we don't need to get into the movie, but just the ending is basically this guy's a criminal arms dealer, and at the end he gets away scot-free and there's no consequences for its actions.
Now, you're talking about, so I feel like there's two types of movie endings that we enjoy. One, that we overall like how a film ended.
Right.
Okay? And so here's an example. It's sort of, there is the Fatal Attraction, where in another studio change, the original ending was a lot more pessimistic, and he was basically framed for Glenn Close's suicide.
Yeah.
And that's kind of a downer, and the audiences were like, So the studio went for the more sensationalistic ending, and it was box office sensation.
Yeah.
So the studio was right in that regard, and I actually think it was a pretty good ending as far as for that movie.
Right.
But because I remember, I worked in the movie theater at the time, and sitting in that audience, the electricity during that ending, why the studio changed it.
Right.
The audiences would go absolutely bonkers. I mean, people are yelling and screaming, and you can feel group energy like that.
Right.
So, but that's okay, the movie ended well, but I'm talking here about movies where that final moment, that final scene is so great that it seals the deal and kind of just says that makes this movie that was already has to be good.
Right.
Some movies can suck, but it maybe have a good last moment. But I'm talking about it takes a good movie and it either makes it a great film or it makes it a classic.
Right.
And I've got some examples.
So do I. And the thing that's
in my
interesting.
pocket.
What?
I get in my pocket.
In your pocket.
I'll pull them out.
You've loaded your pockets with movies.
Yeah. I'm gonna get them, while you're talking, I'm going to get them out of my pocket.
Okay. And so some endings, like when we tend to think about great endings, the first thing that comes to mind are these twist endings. And
yes.
So I don't have a lot of those on my list.
Okay. Well, because they're not your favorite, or you just can't think of ones that.
No, because I think
ending.
I think it's almost too easy. It's like, yeah, The Sixth Sense has a great ending, right?
Yeah, but that's what, so I think it's more of like there's another thing where we don't have to spend. There's the classics everybody knows.
Right.
The ending is great.
Exactly.
And then there's some ones that maybe we can tell people about where it's just, oh yeah, that is a great ending.
And also in looking for them, it's like great movies tend to have great endings. So pretty much any classic movie is probably going to have a pretty good ending. I mean, you can break a movie with a bad ending.
That you can.
Yeah.
You can. So, here's again, I don't even know how we can approach this, but I'm gonna throw out a title.
Yeah, throw out some titles.
That a movie, and again, I like this movie, but it's the absolute last scene of the movie that seals the deal is A Boy and His Dog.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
And I just loved how that ended.
That is a great, and it's a mixture of the bleak and the hopeful ending.
Yes.
And so I think that's something too. It's like, what's the emotionally complex ending? And this is what I'll mention it again. The Sixth Sense, I feel like, in all those Shyamalan movies, that one, the twist ending actually has impact because it's about how the character sees themselves. And it's all coming from the character. It's not just a trick on the audience. The character was also ignorant of this.
When I saw The Sixth Sense, I remember not seeing it I saw it the second week it came out.
Yeah.
And it was in August. And back then, August movies were, not, I don't want to say the dumping ground, but it wasn't where you were.
A little bit, yeah. It was
you weren't as focused on the movie then?
It's between summer movies and fall movies. There's that little area where it's like, maybe this could get an Oscar, maybe it's for award season, but maybe it's a summer movie. And so you end up with these kind of in-between movies in August.
And also things weren't pre-spoiled. You didn't have the internet, a big headline that says, find out about that ending or something. So I had heard it was a really great movie, maybe scary, I don't know, but it was all this buzz happening. I didn't really know much about the film other than the trailer that I'd seen, which looked pretty cool. It was like a kid who sees dead people and that there's a psychiatrist helping. So I didn't know even how the beginning of the movie was going to start with Bruce Willis getting shot by the crazy patient. And so when I watched it, because, again, didn't have the history of M. Night pulling the rug underneath us, and just knowing how scripts are constructed, it's like, oh, okay, so he was, he's been emotionally scarred by this incident, and you're going along, and the last thing you're really even focused on or thinking, because his job is to help the boy.
Right.
You're about the boy's journey, and you're not thinking about Bruce Willis, except it's sort of like he's the B story. So all the things that are happening with his wife and stuff, that seems like the B story, a little background about how his life with his wife has been really separated. So when the end of the movie comes and everything starts fitting together, it took me by surprise in a delightful way. I didn't see it coming. And yet it was like, oh my God, yes. Oh, it was great. And that's the way millions of people saw it and enjoyed it.
Exactly. Well, and it has real emotional impact. and where something like The Village doesn't.
Well, I was going to say, by the time you get to The Village, it starts off really interesting.
Yeah.
But when the twists start coming, it's like grown.
Yes.
Grown time.
Grown time.
They took a movie. I've never had a movie where I was with it for the first 45 minutes so
Yeah.
hard and thinking, boy, it looks amazing, great acting, everything. And then it just goes downhill.
Yeah,
so
it just
fast.
because of the need for twist, the feeling that he needed to have some kind of twist. And so there's just these reveals that really have nothing to do with anything other than tricking the audience.
The twists have been around for a long time, and when you don't know them, they're great. I mean, the ending, it's a classic. I kind of have all these in buckets, right? Some of the classics that we all know and love and have great endings, but you can't do it more than that once, is Planet of the Apes.
Right, yeah.
It's great. I mean, but then so what happens is the Tim Burton movie, which half of it I think is
Oh.
Well,
No.
I was with that movie for a while, and I didn't actually. But there's a movie where the ending is so bad that it sinks the entire film.
It sinks the entire film. Yeah,
it basically makes you question everything you just watched. As far as this guy doesn't know what he's doing, the ending is that bad.
Yes, it is completely. It wrecks the movie.
So because they needed to we have to carry the tradition of some kind, but it didn't make any sense.
It made no sense at all. It was just a twist that had. It wasn't even a twist. It was.
I wonder what Tim Burton was like having to. that wasn't the ending he would have wanted.
No, I'm pretty sure.
The fact that they had to film that must have been.
I'm pretty sure there were some fights over the ending on that movie.
Oh, So I mean, so other classics, right?
Yeah.
We all know The End of The Graduate.
Yeah, that was definitely on my list. I think, it took me a while to realize. I think when I was young, I didn't realize how good that ending was.
Yeah, if you watch, that's a movie where you first see it, you're like I was, probably like 12 or 13.
Yeah.
And I remember it was an okay movie, not getting any of the context.
Not getting any of the context, yeah. But it took me a number of viewings before, because my original thought was, okay, they escape, they're in love, it's sort of this romantic ending. But that last shot of them on the school bus, which apparently Mike Nichols just let the camera roll. They didn't know that he was just going to keep rolling.
That's correct.
So
he let them act?
So the first few, the very beginning of that sort of has that happy, we're in love, we've escaped, we're going off into our wonderful life. And then as they sit there, you start to see the rest of their lives play out on their faces.
And they know, probably what we didn't see is the next stop. They get off and say, wow, this didn't work out.
Well, either that or they, or they're just, because of this impetuous decision, they're kind of stuck with each other based on something kind of superficial almost. The other thing about that movie is that he turns into a weird stalker.
If you look at it just from the script standpoint, it's kind of a mess.
Yeah.
They go on, it seems like, what we don't know, I guess, the backstory is they were probably friends for years and had maybe some unresolved issues. But then he takes her out on one date, acts like an ass, and then the next thing you know, he's up at Berkeley, all interested in her.
Yes,
it's weird.
It's very weird.
Yeah. Because the Berkeley scenes were actually shot at USC.
Oh.
And my freshman year of college, I went to USC. Right before graduation every year, they would show it on campus. So so first time I saw it in the theater, and of course everybody's cheering whenever the scenes for USC come on. But that was when that movie and the impact of it hit me.
Yeah,
I was old enough to really appreciate it. Now having hit college age, and I loved it.
Yeah, and it really does. It does. The movie overall, I think, is a little bit dated now. I've shown it to younger people, and they don't connect with it in the same way.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing is, even when I saw it at that time in the theater, that was 30 years ago.
Yes.
And it was only about 21 years separating when it first came out and me seeing it. So more time has passed.
Yes.
So, again, 50 years, there is such a thing where things aren't quite going to resonate with today's kids.
Exactly, yeah. And The Graduate is definitely one of those, I think, that doesn't quite resonate in the same way.
another film that like it's the end. I feel like it's a great movie, but why it became a classic is the literally final like 2 minutes of the movie. Some Like It Hot.
Oh, you would okay? You really think that's interesting?
Oh yeah, the line where
Nobody's perfect.
Joey says nobody's perfect. That is the perfect ender of a film.
It is.
It seemed at the time it was so ludicrous that in this comedy, and that was like the right line to say to end that film.
Yeah. No, it is. It's the absolute perfect line. But I think the film is great up until that point too. So.
Yeah, but I mean, why is a film a classic remembered? Sometimes it's like, for me, It's a Wonderful Life. The last moment of It's a Wonderful Life is that it just seals it in, man. It's so emotional. And that girl hearing this thing that he had just heard from the angel, but every time a bell rings.
Every time bell rings,
it wraps it up. So these are the classics, like Casablanca, right?
Yes.
That's probably one of the most famous endings of all time. But it's a great ending.
But it's
not just because it's famous.
It's a great ending.
If you watch the movie, the ending of the movie is what seals the deal.
Yeah, that's absolutely true. And it is, but in order for a movie to become a classic, I think it has to have an ending. Like, it has to stick the ending.
Yes. Well, that's where, so, our good old pal, Steven Spielberg.
Yeah.
Look, if you make enough movies, not every ending is going to have the perfect ending.
Yeah.
But why not? I mean, again, we're not just talking about just the endings. I mean, the whole movies are good. But in his early career, if you look at it, Jaws, Raiders of the Lost Ark, E.T., and to a large extent, not his special edition, but his original edition of Close Encounters of the Third Kind, they all had amazing endings. And when I talk about his best ending to me, and it's one of my favorite endings of all time, and it's what really, again, sealed the deal, was the Raiders of the Lost Ark.
Yes.
When they have this conversation, after all like sort of the big climactic action, and Indiana Jones is now back safe.
Yes.
And he's asking the people who sent him on this mission, well, what's going on with the Ark? And they're like, oh, top men are going to, look at it. And he's like, what men? And he's like, top men. And then you see it wheeled into this huge warehouse. I remember that first time sitting in the audience, I just was like, oh my goodness, that's genius. He went through all that to get the Ark, and now it's just stowed away, almost buried as it was before.
It is kind of a breathtaking ending some way, because it's sort of like all that came before doesn't really matter. It's just going to get buried. And I remember the first time I saw the film, the audience reaction, exactly what you were just describing, but I felt like the whole audience sort of took a breath for a minute there.
And that's why it was such a major portrayal of Steven Spielberg with the Crystal Skull, the last Indiana Jones movie, where, he gets into let's be clever, and it's we find out that the warehouse is in Area 51.
Right.
And I was just like, no,
it just
ruins that's where we Yeah. Well, that's this is what, but that mistake encapsulates the real problem with what the Star Wars movies became.
Yes.
Is let's have these like funny little nods to the past that will get a laugh in the audience, but then later you're like, but that kind of ruins it.
And it does.
The movie, and I think about, because I am one of the people that I'm not ashamed to say I think it's the worst film in the Star Wars catalog, is Rogue One.
Oh, yeah, without question, it's the worst film.
I hate that movie. I like to think that it doesn't really, it was just not, it exists. But the moment that it really, out of all the other plot flaws and the fact that it was one film that they then reshot and then Frankensteined it together, there's the scene where they bring in the two characters, or the one guy that was in the original Star Wars movie that says, I have the death sentence on 7 systems.
Right.
The fact that they brought him in, I'm like, no, see, this is the problem. I don't need all those callbacks.
Right. Well, because they're just playing on the audience's nostalgia.
Well, once they do that, they're not building any new things to call back.
Right.
These movies don't have anything that years later you're going to be like, oh, look, they had a callback from Rogue One. You're not going to get that. Nobody will care. They don't know, and that's my biggest problem with a lot of sequels is they never know how to build what was great about a first movie
Well,
and continue.
and if they're thinking about a sequel, sometimes that makes it hard to stick the ending too, because you end up with Marvel.
Do we have
movie.
any sequels? Do we have any sequels that stuck the ending? Do you have any on your list? I'm not sure I do have a single sequel.
Godfather 2. Which is the
and I have Godfather 1 on there.
and Godfather 2 is the exception to all sequel rules.
Funny you mentioned Godfather 2, because one thing that I know, and I know this may be on your list, but what I was thinking, The Conversation.
The Conversation does, and it is on my list.
It's one of my all-time favorite endings.
Yes, it's a stunning ending, and it again has there's a little bit of a twist there, but not that much. I mean, it's not like a plot twist, but it turns the tables in a way that has huge emotional impact, and that's, I think, the thing with an ending is it can't just be clever, it can't just make sense, it has to it has to have an impact on the audience so that you leave the theater kind of with this weight that you've taken on from the movie, and the Conversation absolutely does that. Him sitting there playing the saxophone in his underwear, so vulnerable in his torn up apartment, really makes you rethink the whole movie in a way.
I loved it. I just said, oh my God, this is so genius that this guy is so paranoid, and he gets his phone call and he says he's being watched, and because he's the expert, he is going to figure it out.
Yes.
And he completely destroys his entire apartment.
Looking for bugs.
Can't find it. And of course, this is where the director, Francis Ford Coppola, he now puts the audience as almost the camera, because the area which we don't see whether or not he has uncovered is the area wherever the camera is that is looking at him, which is us.
Which is us, yes.
It's so great. And it took me until the second time I saw it, when it was on, and as some of these movies, just sort of like Taxi Driver are, if you end up seeing them alone on TV when they show up one night, I just got sucked in. And even though I had only seen it like a year or two before, suddenly I was like watching an entirely different movie. This Conversation, it clicked, and I'm like, my God. I like literally sat to say, I'm like, this movie is one of the best movies I've ever seen.
Oh, it's one of my all-time favorite movies, and I've seen it at least a dozen times.
Yeah, and I think that's, again, the journey is great, but sometimes film, and I saw a film just recently. I saw the Jim Jarmusch movie, Don't Die.
Yeah.
And a typical Jarmusch movie, right? Kind of very dry, droll humor. Right. A little bit of a satire on today's world. I enjoyed it. I laughed. But the movie has major third act problems.
Right.
And it felt like it needed about 5 different rewrites that Jim Jarmusch didn't feel like making. And it kind of ends in a way where, again, the whole third act and just the way it ended, he ran out of an idea. And I feel the movie suffers there. Now, my wife would disagree, but again, he didn't stick the landing in this movie. He didn't even stick the third act. That's the biggest problem.
And zombie movies that stick the ending, Night of the Living Dead.
Oh, I didn't put it on my list, but I figured you might. It is one of the great. I mean, it's a shocker.
It's a shocker. Right. It's social impact. The social impact. I don't know if we should reveal the ending here, but
you know what? Though I'm going to look at anybody who's seen the movie. They know.
Yeah.
And if you haven't, right, and you're like, "Well, I really been wanting to see that Night of the Living Dead," then go watch it.
Go watch
you'll
it.
See with the ending. I think it's actually very relevant to today.
It's extremely relevant today, and that's maybe the Jarmusch film doesn't quite do that.
No, I mean, I don't want you didn't see it, so you'll eventually see it. Now, other films, I'm trying to think of ones that like maybe people don't know so well, but that I really like the ending of. I think it's perfect. One, I don't know. I think you might have seen this. Have you ever seen David Lynch's The Straight Story?
Oh yes. Oh, that is a great ending.
The ending of that movie not only floored me, it had me in tears.
Yeah. It is, when he's sitting there with Harry Dean Stanton at the end.
And they look up, and what's amazing about this film is that the two brothers are estranged. One brother is dying. The other doesn't really have the means to go there. So and this is based on a true story, for those who don't know, he travels like a few hundred miles to see his estranged brother on a tractor.
It's actually, I think, a riding lawnmower.
A riding lawnmower. I call them tractors.
Well, it is,
because
but-
I have. Yeah,
but
but yes, it is a riding lawnmower. And it's a great journey, and I actually think it's one of Lynch's. It is the straight story. It's also Lynch's most straightforward narrative.
Absolutely.
There's no weird tricks. It's a journey, and the look on Harry Dean Stanton's face when you get hints of what their argument was about
Right.
over the journey. When he sees his brother and he sees the tractor, he realizes what it must have taken for his brother to come here.
Yeah.
And without them having to say a word, it's like this beautiful unspoken acting between the two.
Yeah.
He knows how much he now means to his brother. And everything that must have gone on between them has washed away.
Yeah.
And it was really, to me, a very emotional experience.
I totally agree. Yeah.
And that's what to me is a great ending of a film,
Let me think of a few others that really.
Well, I'm going to lead you to you can get
Oh,
this
you've got some
discussion
more.
because he's got so many. I'm just going to throw out the director, and you're going to give me the movies.
Okay.
Kubrick.
Okay, I had trouble with this on my list because I actually think there aren't any Kubrick films that don't stick the landing.
Some might say that his last film, even though I don't agree with those people, but I'm talking about I even though I think you're right, all the endings are great. I think that the specific endings, just the climax moment,
Right.
He has a few that are just stunners.
Well, Doctor Strange.
And he only made 9 movies. Well, okay, so that's what I'm talking about. So Doctor Strangelove. I mean, that is one of the most iconic
endings ever.
And yeah, and I'm talking like this is like the last 30 seconds.
Yes, exactly. The last 30 seconds, when the music and the atomic bomb explosions come up.
Yeah, I mean that's a great, daring, how dare you audacity ending.
It absolutely is. Yeah, and it still has impact.
2001.
Yeah, of course, right?
I mean,
but
the whole climax of the movie, but like that end, I mean, just that whole sequence when he's there on wherever he is.
Yeah.
Up into the star baby looking straight at us and Earth.
You had mentioned something about freeze frame endings being lame.
Okay. Prove me wrong. Give me a freeze frame ending that works.
Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid.
It's one of the great endings.
Yes.
And it's a freeze frame. You're right. That is the great freeze frame ending.
Yes, that is the exception to your argument.
And you know what I like, and here's why that works, is that in reality, or at least in lore, Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid were killed
Yes.
by the Bolivian army. In this film, it leaves the legend intact. They go out shooting and it freeze frames and you don't know what happens after.
Exactly, and it freeze frames them as this sort of iconic image of these characters. And so they continue to exist as those characters in history.
Here's one that involves kind of freeze frames, a lot of cutting, but it goes the opposite route of Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid, and I think it's just a fantastic ending, is Bonnie and Clyde.
Oh, of course, yeah.
But it's so great because they have that freeze moment where each of them look at each other in a moment in time, and then you have this massive real-time explosion, and then slow motion of the bullets, and it is epic. And actually, the whole sequence leading up to that
is pretty
with this music is fantastic.
Yep. I would almost include the Wild Bunch in a similar kind of ending.
Oh, the whole ending of that is amazing.
Yes.
Yeah, it's a whole sequence,
It's
right? That's a whole ending sequence.
Yeah,
That's
it's like
fantastic.
20 minutes of just carnage. And both those films were at the beginning of being able to really show gun violence in movies.
Yes.
And they really pushed the envelope a lot. Looking back on them now, they're not, they're a little tame by today's standards, actually.
Another great Kubrick ending, The Killing.
The Killing has really a perfect ending.
It does.
I don't think
I'm not going to give that one away because I think if you haven't seen The Killing, because it's not, I don't want to say it's not one of his known titles, but it's one of the earlier ones. Sometimes I think people skip over it. You should see The Killing, and it's a great ending.
It's a great ending. I think Full Metal Jacket has a great ending. The Mickey Mouse ending.
Yes. No, I like that ending too. And then the final shot of The Shining.
Yes.
Is very intriguing.
Yeah.
It's memorable.
So, again, Kubrick, like I said, pretty much sticks most of the endings.
Well, I mean, again, he only made 9 main feature films, and he obviously, as a craftsman, he focused on every minute detail of the film, including how is my movie going to end?
Yeah, because it is so important. You know, it's what you leave with. It's the feeling that you leave the movie with. Speaking of feelings that you leave the movie with, how about All That Jazz?
It's on my list, my friend, and I know we've talked about this before, but the whole climax to All That Jazz is fantastic.
Yes.
The Bye Bye Love or Bye Bye Life.
And then ending with the body bag.
And then after it zips and it cuts to black, then as the credits go up, you have Ethel Merman singing "There's No Business Like Show Business."
Exactly. Yes. It's just, yeah. And that's the music nails the ending there.
I have a tie-in.
Yeah.
Another great ending. And it has a similar ending in credits where it has that very high energy, like I think it's Hooray for Hollywood. And it may also be Ethel Merman singing it, is the final moments of The Long Goodbye.
Oh, yes. Oh,
I love that. And again, it's funny. I know you've seen it, and people are like, "But what's that?" Well, you know what? If you're intrigued why we like the ending of The Long Goodbye, check it out.
Go see it. It's
one of my all-time favorites.
It's one of my all-time favorites too. Robert Altman directed with Elliot Gould as Philip Marlowe.
Yeah, 70s.
The 70s Philip Marlowe, the kind of relaxed stoner Philip Marlowe. Another classic. Probably one of the great endings in movie history, Vertigo.
Yes, it is. It's probably what seals that as one of the classics of Hitchcock. It's that last moment. It's so shocking.
Yeah, the last sort of 30, 45 seconds maybe.
Yeah, the climax to the very end. I mean, that's another thing. Hitchcock knew exactly when you end the movie.
Yes.
Boom.
And boom, and then the bells, and it's done.
Like end of North by Northwest.
Yes.
Another classic ending.
Yeah. And Vertigo is really considered one of the best movies ever now. It keeps showing up in like top 10 list of, I think
I've seen it many times.
I think it might be. Yeah, go ahead.
It goes up and down from like the best to like the top 5.
Yeah, but it's definitely in there. Okay, here's 2 movies which have very similar endings that I really like. One is McCabe and Mrs. Miller.
Yes, I like that too. Another Altman.
Yes, which ends with him dying in the church. And another movie that's similar to that, similar kind of ending, I guess, just because the character's dying at the end, is Sand Pebbles.
Oh, I know. It's a Steve McQueen fan. It's always sad. It's the Sand Pebbles. Plus, he didn't die in too many movies.
He didn't die in too many movies, but that is such sort of just a terrifying ending. He's all alone and he's dying. Yeah, and then the movie ends there.
And it's funny you mentioned him, right? So Steve McQueen, one of my childhood idols.
Yeah.
2 films, great endings. The Great Escape.
Yes.
And I'm not talking about the climax, which is great. I'm talking about the end.
The very end.
Where you're feeling sad because of all of the people that the Nazis shot. But then Steve McQueen is rounded up and delivered back to the camp. And his sort of theme music comes on. And it doesn't even know, you don't know why, because other prisoners are going back into their huts. But he is getting sent right back to the cooler.
Right back to the cooler.
And his buddy like throws the glove at him.
Yeah.
And he goes in, and the one guard who's been like, locking him in and out of the cooler, he just stops and listens to that baseball hitting the wall again.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just like, I love it. I love it. I love it. Love it. And it's one of my earliest movie memories as a child. I've seen that movie scores of times, and I love it.
Yeah. Great ending.
I also love the Thomas Crown Affair, original,
Yep.
with Steve McQueen, and the ending there. let's see. What I'm going to say, an ending that it's a very controversial ending. There's either you love it or you hate it, but I love it. Is the ending of There Will Be Blood?
Yeah, I like that ending.
Yeah, one of the great emotional endings. Like you're a Grinch if you do not shed tears at the end of this film. Is Cinema Paradiso?
I am a Grinch.
What?
Yeah.
Oh man, you are the worst. How could you not cry tears at the end when the guy's like looking at the reel of kisses?
That movie just doesn't do it for me.
I mean, it's not. I've seen it one time.
Yeah.
But that ending, I'll never. I mean, I was slobbering. I was very emotional.
I was not. I'll give you that one. I'm not going to criticize it.
You know that people like it.
I know. It just didn't do it for me. It just didn't click for me.
Okay, well, we're going to move on. I'm just too distraught now. Do you have any like weird surprises that people should think about for endings? We've gone through a lot of titles.
Sexy Beast.
Sexy Beast. Now, see, I don't even remember the final ending. What happens in the very end? See, I guess it wasn't that good for me.
Okay.
I mean, it was not one of my favorite movies, I'll be honest. But I can't remember what happens at the very end.
Well, they've buried him under the pool, right?
Because where the boulder first went down?
Exactly. And so after he's killed, they bury him under the pool. So at the end, the camera goes down into the ground, and the camera goes underground, and sitting down underground is the Beast, sitting there smoking a cigarette.
Oh, I vaguely remember.
Okay.
I actually found. I know this is people love Ben Kingsley's performance in that. I found it a little too over the top.
I love it.
I know. I don't.
I think you're right. It's totally over the top. That's what I
know. I just, for some reason, I know you're a big fan of that director, but I didn't like that movie that much.
I think you need to see it again because
I liked In Her Skin, or what's it called?
Under the Skin.
Under the Skin. I like that a lot more. The same director.
A Sexy Beast. Maybe you didn't realize it's a comedy.
Oh no, I knew what they were going for. Thank you very much. We're having a disagreement, folks, on Sexy Beast, but we're not prepared to talk about it. I haven't seen it since I first saw it at the theater. So in that regard, I'll always give things a second chance.
Yeah, I think it's worth a second chance. Okay, should I just throw out some other titles here at the end?
Yeah, we're getting close to the end
here's
of
one,
our time.
Here's one we've talked about before, and so I'll just mention it briefly. Days of Heaven.
Great ending, yep.
Yep. Harold and Maude.
Another great ending. I didn't put it on my list, but I agree.
Midnight Cowboy.
Maybe.
Oh, come on.
I mean, again, where I'm looking at from like just the slam dunk very last portion, I don't know.
Well, when they're on the bus at the end?
Yeah, I mean, but that's like not. I don't know. I guess is it a classic ending? I guess.
Yeah, I mean, it's not like the Third
it's no
Man.
Citizen Kane.
It's no Citizen Kane. It's no Third Man.
Well, that's what I'm saying. Those are like, I want something as good as those endings.
Okay, here's another one because we're going to get in trouble if we don't mention this one on the show.
Okay,
Chinatown.
Oh yeah, I mean that's a classic ending.
Yeah,
right. Yeah, well, there's going to be there's always as many titles as we've thrown out. I'm sure people have a whole bunch more. And feel free to reach out to us.
And there's a ton
of
those twisty type endings that I left off my list just because I was going for something else.
Well, I'm going to give you quickly three endings, and they're early in his career. Tarantino endings I really liked. I liked how Pulp Fiction ended.
Yep. I think I
liked the ending of Reservoir Dogs at the time. It's been copied so many times after.
Right.
People forget how unique it was to have them all shoot each other and then have Steve Buscemi kind of skip out of there. Like, what the hell? But here's one that people wouldn't necessarily think, because I think it's one of the worst movies I've ever seen. But it has a great ending. Is Tarantino's segment of Four Rooms.
Oh, which I've never seen.
Okay, the whole movie is terrible.
Right.
He has the last segment, which is the best segment. But the ending, and I guess I'll just tell it.
Yeah, just tell it.
because you probably know enough. Is that it basically takes place in a hotel room
Right.
all one night, and there's these various stories in the hotel room, and they have this bellhop that I think was supposed to be Steve Buscemi,
But it's-
which would have been way better.
Yeah, but it's Tim Roth.
Yeah, and he's miscast, and mostly because each director directs him a completely different way, so he doesn't have a fluid character.
Oh, that's bizarre. Okay.
Yeah, and the only person who seemed to know how to direct him properly was Tarantino. And he basically did a rewrite of an old, it was either an Alfred Hitchcock story from the Alfred Hitchcock show or Twilight Zone. I can't remember which.
Right.
And it had to do with people betting all these cuts, and then there was like a finger thing that you would
Okay.
get cut if you.
Right.
Yeah, I forget the whole riff, but somehow the bellhop gets involved, and there's all that Tarantino dialogue, and
Right.
he's the only one that kind of figures out a whole camera style. A lot of it's done in like the one take, and it's more about the build up to kind of like, the payoff of
Right.
the joke. And, there's a lot of intensity, whether or not someone's going to get their finger cut off or whatever. And he's the bellhop's going to have to cut the finger if somebody
Right,
I don't know,
right.
stutters or whatever. And so you're waiting and waiting and waiting and waiting and waiting and waiting. And finally it comes down to this whole big thing, and somebody stops or stutters or does the thing that would cause somebody's finger to be cut off.
Right.
So instead of this moment of oh my God, now what, usually there's the scene of what's going to happen now? Is he going to have to cut off the
Right,
finger?
right.
And you have to deal with that. It's become very intense. Instead, without missing a beat, as soon as the pause happens and the
Yeah.
action is very drawn out at the time, Tim Roth literally just takes the hatchet, chops the finger, grabs the money, and then walks out of the room. and it is so fast and stunning that you're just you can't believe what just happened, because it'd been such a buildup, and then it just was perfect. And it's the only thing I said, boy, there was a movie here, but the
Yeah.
rest of it, they just blew. But I love the ending of that movie, but it's not enough for me to recommend it.
Tarantino is so good at lines of tension and how he draws out tension. And then, that he's drawn it all out and then just hits it with the very quick, violent ending.
Yeah. And it was just sort of wait, that was it. It was
Yeah.
so perfect. And I think that the idea was that you'd see all the hell that this bellhop went through during the night, and that this guy finally, he kind of gets a reward at the end.
Yeah.
And the ending was set up perfectly for Tarantino's story, but it's botched with the other three.
Yeah. Okay, here's an ending here's an ending I love. It's a similar kind of just sudden ending. But it's an ending I love, but it's undermined by one thing for me. It's the ending of Network.
Yeah, see, now there's a movie where the movie is perfect, and I like how it ends, but I don't necessarily love the ending.
Okay, so here's why. When they kill him at the end, that's the whole thing. Okay, we're going to have to kill him. They have the
Spoiler alert.
Yeah, spoiler alert. Howard Beale gets killed at the end on live television. And which I think is great. He falls down on the stage and he's dead. I love that. And then this voiceover comes in.
Yep.
And to me, the voiceover ruins the ending. Because,
And mind you, it's a small ruin because it's one of your favorite movies.
yeah,
so.
it's one of my favorite movies. It's a small. It doesn't completely destroy the ending, but it makes it less powerful than it could be because it turns it into a joke. It actually has and this is the story of Howard Beale, the only man to be killed because of low ratings.
I hear you.
Yeah.
I am agreeing. I don't think it's the best. Putting that perfect ending on it just makes it a classic, and yet some movies still survive as a classic even if the ending's not perfect.
Sure,
But,
absolutely.
today we've been just talking about the movies that we really love the ending, and speaking of ending, we're about to wrap up.
We
here.
are about to wrap up. Yeah.
But before we go, I've got one more
Oh.
IMDb
Oh no. Okay.
user review for you, and it's from Yaya Mafia -55211.
One of my favorite critics.
Yes, okay. But it's good is that I actually went to see what other films that Yaya Mafia had reviewed, and he gave a little profile. So I think it's important that we know about his profile first.
Okay.
I like watching movies. Sometimes I use Google Translate, and sometimes I am lazy. but you will still understand my English, even if it is not right. I like Jean-Claude Van Damme and good cinema. Because, those two go wrapped in hand in hand. I like Michael J. Fox and serious movies only, please. I do not like Luca Guadagnino movies. I do not like Steven Seagal, and I do not like Ellen DeGeneres or John Travolta. But Mark Wahlberg is good. I can't make this up. I swear to you, it sounds like I wrote this, but I did not. I like to give reviews of best cinema, and sometimes I review really bad ones just because I think cinema is very important for development of human. Yeah, so, and I'm not going to see if you can figure out the movie, okay? I don't think it mentions it, and afterwards I'll tell you what he was reviewing. Okay. This is a 1 out of 10 review. It's from November of 2018. This movie is so bad. People talk about visuals of this movie, but I am surprised about this. The shots are what they should be, like any movie. But why do people say this is lush photography? I can find 5 minutes of any Ridley Scott movie, and it would be more lush than 50 best shots this director has. I don't get it. I think it's maybe because very little else is good in his movies, and the photography is the best only choice this director has to seem good. That's a bad That's a bad sign. Hire a good cameraman, and you'll always have that. Great films has great stories, great direction of actors, not just camera, great sense of pace and editing. If this director can learn to edit it in 2 hours, it would have been something. Bravo! And good-looking photography. But only it has photography. I was thinking about this movie a lot, not because I wanted to understand it. I was thinking how it's possible this movie was made and can be so bad. This movie just plain is boring. The end is funny. The tone is not oppressive in a good way, like Pixote or Schindler's List. It is oppressive, like it is you looking at a blank white wall for 2 hours and a half. Nothing happens in the story, so the boring of the colors only make it seem like a very long journey into mediocre and pretty boring. Please don't go see this movie. Better to do something with your life. Why this movie was made and how do a director like this get the money to make it? Sometimes I think we live in bizarro world where opposite happens than what should. Do you know what the movie is?
No.
It's Suspiria, the remake.
I was going to guess that, actually.
Yes, well, he does say in his little profile that he hates Luca Guadagnino movies, and this must have been the film that took him over the edge. So I think that we're going to see more of these fun reviews in future installments of the program.
Oh boy, yeah, it's going to be great.
Do you have any parting words before we do an ending of our own of this program?
No, I don't think so. I mean, I don't think we can necessarily stick the ending of this episode with some kind of...
No, that's the thing is, yeah, it's just going to end. It's not. People are going to be like, boy, that was a pretty good episode, but the ending was horrible.
The ending was terrible. There was no twist. It didn't deepen what we had gone through before. It had no emotional impact.
No. Here's the twist. Hey, this is Chuck Todd. I'm Chuck Todd all along, and I don't like you making fun of me.
We're both
my
Chuck
hairstyle.
Todd. We're both Chuck Todd.
That's right. You're Chuck Todd's alter ego.
Oh man, there was one movie I forgot though. Do we have time? Can I do one more movie?
Sure, I can always edit it out later.
Okay.
No, just kidding.
The Man Who Would Be King.
Never seen it.
Okay.
I'm at least being honest. I never saw it.
Yeah, there are two different endings to this film. One of them is great, the other is lame. And I have not been able to find the original, the British ending, which I've been trying to track down for years, that I saw as a kid.
So when it was released in the United States, the John Huston film from like 1975, it was released with a different ending?
Yes.
Interesting.
Yeah. So there's two endings to this film. And yeah, and I saw one of them as a kid, and I was blown away by it as a kid. I was probably 10. Blown away by the ending. And then I went to watch the film again when I was, maybe 22 or something. And I was just shocked. Where's the ending I remember?
That's kind of how I felt like watching the reboots of the Star Wars movies when George Lucas took out stuff that I was like, wait a minute, what happened?
What happened? That's not the end. That's not. Yeah, I mean, The Man Who Would Be King was such a good ending. I was like telling all my friends about it in school. I talked about this ending for years, and then now I can't find it. Maybe I remembered it wrong.
I'm going to do some research on this, dude. Now you've intrigued me, and it is a film that has kind of been on my list, my short list of films that I should have seen and haven't. So I'm going to go and watch it, definitely. So anyways, everyone, this is Stuff We've Seen with Jim and Teal. You can always reach us at feedback@jimandteal.com or stuffwe'veseen.com, and catch us on our Facebook page, which a lot of you have liked, which I think then allows you to then see our posts on that. So thank you. We got like over 100 people now liking the page, so that's good. And we'll be back at some point. Already, I thought we weren't going to be taping in the summer, and here it is in the summer we've taped. Oh,
yeah.
wow.
We'll have more episodes coming this summer.
We will. All right. Well, go see some stuff. What's out this week?
I'm going to see Toy Story 4 at the drive-in tonight.
You at the drive-in, really?
Yeah.
Or are you joking?
I'm not joking.
You're going to go to the drive-in. There's a drive-in near you?
Yes. Well, we haven't tried it out yet. I think it's sort of a mock drive-in.
Oh, okay. Well, that's cool. Hopefully, I don't know if my theater is going to play Midsommar.
Yeah, so we got to see
but
that,
I hope to see that soon. Yeah, we got to see that so I can crap on it. I'm already wanting to hate that movie, only because I've already reading obnoxious reviews of these people that think it's the second coming of horror. And it just, I mean, maybe it is. I don't know. I hate that when people, because they're already splurging themselves over the fact that, oh, Hereditary was great, and now I didn't think Hereditary was great.
Yeah, I didn't love Hereditary.
No, so I'm already distrusting anybody that loved Hereditary and is now losing themselves over Midsommar.
Yes. Okay, so, hey, thanks for listening, everybody.
10 minutes later. This is the ending. This is you know what this is? This is Lord of the Rings, Return of the King, the 15 endings. That's what it is.
All right, thanks for listening.
All right, thanks, Frodo. Bye. You're like, I'm not going to say anything because I want this to end, so I'm not going to say anything more. Goodbye.